Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2026 installment of Women Who Testify. I'm so excited that you are here with us tonight. And ladies, we are going to have an excellent conversation tonight. So get ready. I want to first take this opportunity again to welcome all of you ladies, mamas. Come in the room. We are so happy that you're here. We're streaming on Facebook and on YouTube. So, without further ado, if you don't know already, my name is Chanel Holly. I'm the founder of Chanel Holly LLC, and I am very excited for you to meet my guest this evening. My guest this evening is Brittany Moffitt, and Brittany is a licensed clinical social worker. She's a psychotherapist. She is also an EMDR trained clinician. Okay. And she is the founder of Worthy to Live Therapy, which is a mental health practice for women. And at the center of Brittany's work in this practice, she helps women who are dealing with trauma. She helps women who are dealing with any kind of emotional overwhelm. And she also helps women who've had difficult birth experiences. And Brittany looks to serve these women in a powerful way, walking alongside of them throughout the course of their particular journey, whether it's the trauma, whether it's the difficult birthing, whether it's just being emotionally overwhelmed. So, Brittany, welcome. I am so glad you're here. Thank you for joining me tonight. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Chanel. Happy to be here. I'm doing well.
Great, great. I'm really excited about this conversation because I do believe that there needs to be more of a focus on this for women. And in particular, I'm very interested tonight in us starting off with hearing how this particular type of therapy for moms became such a passion for you. So, as we open up tonight, can you share with us your personal story that led you to pursue this type of therapy for women?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, again, thank you for having me. My journey to becoming a licensed therapist and doing trauma work has been a long journey. I've been in the mental health field for about 7 years now, but I opened my own practice, Worthy to Live Therapy, 2 years ago. And my journey to the perinatal, working with moms, that happened after I gave birth to my first son. And I experienced myself postpartum depression after having him. And it was through my own struggle of navigating that really led me to want to work with women to then help them to navigate postpartum and pregnancy. And I had, just to give some context, I had a high risk pregnancy with my son, and I had preeclampsia. And so with preeclampsia, for those, who don't know, that's high blood pressure during pregnancy. And often that leads to a lot of doctor's appointments, a lot of scans, checking, make sure the baby is still growing healthy. And there can be a lot of uncertainty during that time with
For
both
sure.
mom and the baby. And for women who have had complications during pregnancy, complications during birth, often those times, all the focus is on just the health of the baby, like the physical health of the mom and the physical health of the baby. But
Mhm.
there's not a lot of attention to what's going on for the mom mentally and emotionally or even spiritually during that time that she's navigating complications. And so after I dealt with preeclampsia and with both of my pregnancies, 'cause I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Okay.
I had, dealt with the postpartum depression, and navigating that was very isolating, and there wasn't a lot of support. And so that's really what led me to want to do this work with moms.
Wow. I'm so glad that as you gave context, that you also mentioned the fact that two of the primary areas that often get neglected in this, we know that, of course, there's going to be, like you said, the focus on the physical health of mom and baby, because, like you said, with preeclampsia, blood pressure levels are usually skyrocketing all over the place. It's no fun at all. But I'm also glad that you gave mention to the fact of the mental aspect of it, which often is not maybe, of course, at that time, at least, placed, is not given a higher emphasis as maybe it would be or should be. And then also the fact spiritually, the spiritual piece of what a mom may be navigating, during that particular season of her life, especially after having such a difficult childbirth. So I want to ask you in particular, especially since you brought up the spiritual component of it, this type of work for you, this is not just a 9 to 5. This is not just something that's just a career for you. You feel that the Lord has really called you to this type of work for moms, this type of therapy in particular for moms that's much needed. Talk to our audience a little bit tonight about uh, the Lord really drawing you to this work, the spiritual piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it often starts, I feel like the Lord often works things in ourself before we then go and pour out to others.
Hmm.
And so I felt that during the time that I was dealing with my own postpartum depression, the the Lord was really helping me through that. Even though it felt like I was in it alone and it was very dark time, I know the Lord was really helping me through that. And I think as Christian women, we go into pregnancy and birth and we're praying, right? We're praying over the pregnancy, we're praying over that birth experience, we're believing for positive outcomes.
Hmm.
And for some women, that happens, and for other women, it doesn't. And for the women who do have complications, sometimes that can make them either question their faith or question if they prayed enough,
Sure.
question why it happened to them. All of those, thoughts they can wrestle with.
Right.
And it's so important, I think, during that time when a woman may be wrestling with those things, to make sure she's really drawing onto the Lord and in his strength to get her through that really hard time. And when I was going through the postpartum depression, the way I describe it to people is it was kind of like being in a dark room. You know, if you walk into a dark room and you're trying to find like the light switch. So you
Right.
may be like having your arms out like this, trying to just figure out where you're going.
Right.
That's kind of what the depression felt like. Like it felt like just being in a dark room and you didn't really know where the light was.
Hmm.
Right. And in it that stuck out to me so much after the fact, because we know that, Jesus is the light, and that, as you draw closer to him, his light will shine on those dark areas, those dark spaces that you may be carrying. And so that was the one thing that really helped me, to the Lord was working in me personally in this area of perinatal maternal mental health, from my own, that's my personal belief and faith and what I experienced. And I know everyone has a different testimony and story.
Sure.
But so that was the one piece that I felt like I got really support by drawing to the Lord. And then also the Lord just was really talking to me about how there's such an attack on mothers and an attack on families. And I just believe that the first attack happens in that birthing space, because
That
I believe it is truly the enemy wants to steal the joy from the mother of, having this child and entering into motherhood. And so that's why I feel so passionate about it, because I've always been a person that wants to I've always been a person that understands cycles, and I think about families, and I think about how things can get passed down from family to family if we aren't
generation.
doing our
Yeah.
inner work and really healing. And so I thought about how, wow, like if the mom comes into mothering feeling depressed, feeling anxious, feeling panicky, that already disrupts, the family attachment between mom and baby, and all of that foundation. And so that's why it's so critically important to me that we make sure that we are taking care of the minds and the hearts of mothers. that
Yes.
they aren't meant to. Yes, we're meant to be the helpers and the caretakers, and all of those roles are very important, and we can't do that unless we're mentally and emotionally well too. And so I just believe that there's so much more work that has to be done around preserving and caring for and protecting the minds and hearts of women, as we go and pour out so much to everyone else.
I agree. I agree. Well said. Wow. You know, um, I'm sure many moms, this resonates with them because for most of the moms that are watching tonight, I'm pretty sure if they are moms of more than one child in particular, they have likely, like myself and like you shared in your personal story, had at least one difficult childbirth. And subsequently, you find yourself kind of in a difficult place. You maybe find yourself in a difficult season afterwards. Um, why do you feel that moms have some difficulty, finding language for what they're going through? Um, what is the blockage that really, keeps moms from really being able to give language for what they are experiencing in the aftermath of a difficult childbirth?
Yes, that's a great question. And I love that you said that there's a mom who likely had a traumatic birth
Mhm.
experience. And the current statistics in 2026 is that 1 in 3 mothers have had a traumatic birth experience, a report that their birth was traumatic. So if you know 3 mothers, then at least one of them has had a traumatic birth experience, right? And so it's really common, but as you said, there's not language for it because it's not talked about.
Mhm.
And I think one reason that moms may have a hard time putting language to it is because we're taught to just see the joyful moments, right? Like,
Mhm.
motherhood is supposed to be joyful. Having your baby is supposed to be, you're supposed to be happy. You're supposed to celebrate. You're supposed to feel all of these positive things,
Mhm.
right? And so that's kind of what's portrayed either in social media or even from your own family. I think about
Okay.
women who, especially women who've had a traumatic birth, and maybe they had a traumatic birth with the first grandkid. I mean,
Mhm.
if it's the first grandkid, everyone is like, "Oh, we're celebrating this baby. This is going to be a wonderful time for
Mhm.
all of us." And but the mom's like, "I'm struggling here. Like, what I went through, whether it was preeclampsia or an emergency C-section or postpartum hemorrhaging or a long NICU stay." Like,
Wow.
those moments stick with the mother. They don't just separate and then she just it's like, "Oh, I'm just going to experience all of these super positive emotions,"
Right.
right? And so I think that's one thing that makes it really hard to have the language for it is one, no often no one's really asking you, "What was birth like for you? How
Hmm.
did it impact you?" Right? What did you experience? What were you feeling? And those conversations aren't really happening. The focus goes right to the baby and be
Right.
happy and just love being a mother, and don't worry, you'll forget about it as the baby gets older. Those are the messages that women hear. And so then it what happens next is there's a lot of shame. There's a
Hmm.
lot of shame of, if everyone's telling me I'm supposed to be happy, why am I not happy?
Okay.
What's wrong with me that I'm not happy? Right? And so the shame starts to take in, there must be something wrong with me that I'm not happy.
Mhm.
When in reality, the truth is that there isn't nothing wrong with the mother. It's the fact that they went through something extremely either traumatic or overwhelming or disappointing, and they need the space to process what they just went through.
That's good. Yes.
Mhm.
That's real good.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. We have to do better, I think, as a society in terms of really having that space available for moms, like you
Mhm.
said, mentally. to really be able to process everything, process their experience, because not everyone's experience is going to be the same, as we talked about so far, and moms definitely need to be free without shame to process what they've gone through, and to be able to get back to a place where they feel healthy. Of course, physically, we want to be healthy, right? But as you said, all of it, the physical aspect, the mental aspect as well, giving moms this space to really fully
Mhm.
recuperate and fully recover, because
Yeah.
there is a big emphasis in our culture, if we're honest, about quickly being able to just bounce back, right? And
Yes.
put on our 1,001 hats, as we did prior to the baby being born. So I definitely agree with what you're saying.
Yes, and just to add to that,
Sure.
Chanel, I love that you said that because I know maybe even the word process may sound like too broad or too clinical, but it really is just making room, asking, "How are you feeling about this? How are you feeling about being a mom? Is there anything you're struggling with right now? What do
Mhm.
you need? What does support look like for you right now?" And and for a lot of moms, they may not know, they may be like, "I don't even know what I need. I don't know what kind of support that I need." They may need to just say whatever is coming up and just know that you're not going to judge them and you're not going to have them just feel like they have to feel better in this moment. So that's what I mean by they just need space, right? They need to be able to
Right.
just be able to process. And and they also and they also need to and I think also if there's a family member or a friend who wants to help, sometimes it's helpful to I know we're used to being like, "What do you need? What do you need? What can I do?" And then that kind of puts the mental load to say on the mom to figure out what
The
she needs,
ownership,
who may
yeah.
not have the words.
Hmm.
And a good piece of advice that I give people is think about what your gifts are as an individual. If you're really good at cooking, then bring her over a meal that you love to cook. If you're really good at buying clothes, then get her a pajama set because you've been thinking about her, right? Like think about what your gifts are and use your gifts to then pour into that new mom
I
and do
love
it
that.
automatically without even ask her having to ask.
I love that. I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
Use what you're gifted at and bless that mama. Bless her. I love that. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
You know, um, I was going to ask you about the nervous system, and we're going to come back to that piece, because I do want to talk a little bit about that, the impact of traumatic birth on a mom's nervous system. But since we're kind of already in the vein of kind of the conversations that a lot of moms experience post delivery, whether it be family or friends, as to how you're doing or what do you need and all of those things. Let's talk a little bit about the mom comparison piece, and not in the traditional sense of mom comparison. We're not necessarily here talking about the mom who's comparing herself to, that Instagram influencer that she loves per se, that Instagram or Facebook influencer that just had a baby yesterday and today they're mopping their floors and putting the kids to bed and cooking dinner and doing all
Right.
of the things, like you know we're not talking about that per se, but the mom comparison when it comes to sharing with maybe other mom friends that difficult birthing story.
Mm,
Talk about mom comparison through that lens a little bit.
yeah.
And how does that end up impacting a mom ultimately making the decision to seek out therapy for herself as a result of the mom comparison, in terms of when she may compare her birthing story with another one? Um,
Mhm.
I know a lot of times it's kind of like maybe likened to who can tell the worst story. But
Mhm.
in this case, we're not just saying it for the sake of just telling the worst story, but hearing what another mom has been through, that whether, like you said, it's been any of those traumatic birthing experiences.
Mhm.
How does that ultimately impact the mom making a choice to say, you know what, I know that I need someone to walk alongside me with this, and it is time for me to maybe reach out professionally and seek therapy.
Yes. So when it comes to moms sharing and comparing birth stories, I often hear moms say, other moms had it worse than I did.
Hmm.
At least my baby is healthy. I shouldn't complain, right? And on the surface, like those thoughts, they sound like gratitude, humility, a perspective on things, right?
Mhm.
But underneath, there is this, there can often be this subtle something else going on. And what I mean by that is like a quiet way of talking yourself out of your own pain.
Hmm.
Because comparing stories can feel safer than actually dealing with the feeling that's actually there. Because if someone else has it worse, then maybe my story doesn't count. So then I don't have to deal with it, right? Or maybe I shouldn't need support or I shouldn't reach out because my birth experience doesn't count or wasn't as worse as someone else's.
Mhm.
Or maybe I should just move on, right? And so, but it's important to know that healing isn't something that has to be like proven or compared. You don't need a bad enough story in order to get mental health support. And and I think this calls for an important time to talk about what is birth trauma,
Mhm.
because birth trauma, it can be a life-threatening situation where a mom felt like either she was going to die or her baby was going to die or both.
Mhm.
And or it can also be times where the mother felt helpless in the birthing room, or she felt powerless, or she felt very out of control. Those things also can be very traumatic.
Okay.
And I love the quote from Gabor Mate, and I hope I don't mess it up. But essentially says that trauma is not what happens to you, like as far as like the facts, but it's about how it impacted you.
Hmm.
Because me and you, Chanel, could have had the same exact birth experience. Maybe we both had preeclampsia, we had an induction, and then we had maybe a C-section,
Mhm.
right? We had the exact same medical facts on paper happen.
Okay.
But maybe I came out of it feeling very traumatized by it, but you didn't,
Okay.
right? And so that's why it's so important that that moms don't just compare things based off of the medical facts, because it's less about what factually happened and more about how it impacted you. Did it leave any emotional or mental scars when you left out of that labor and delivery room?
Wow.
And
That's
so
good.
And so that's why, that comparison trap, it can have a very subtle way of people almost forcing themselves to move on when they don't have to. They can get the support that they need.
Wow. You know, everything is very fast paced, obviously. We live in a social media, um, a social media frenzied society where, you can find out information very quickly and you can see kind of the goings ons of people's lives very quickly. Information is readily available. And so you're right. You've had so many powerful wisdom nuggets, and I hope that the ladies and the moms that are watching this or will watch the replay, I hope that you caught those and write them down because maybe you are currently experiencing this or have experienced this, or you know a mom who has. There's been so many powerful wisdom nuggets of information that is not typically shared about, a difficult childbirth. And so the fact that we make room for these types of conversation is very important because, there's so many women, and I think you would agree, Brittany, there's so many women that silently struggle, you
Yes.
know, that silently struggle and that unfortunately put themselves on the back burner, may not really reach out and get the professional help that they need through therapy. Let's talk a little bit now about how the impacts of what the impacts of a difficult birth experience are as it relates to the mom's nervous system.
Yes. Okay. And I do want to add to what you were just saying about moms who are silently struggling and may not open up. I just want to tell you a very short story there
Sure, go ahead.
because I can remember being maybe about 3 or 4 months postpartum with my son. And you know how you have to do your follow-up with your doctor
Yeah,
after you have a baby and they're checking everything out. And then you also need to have like an appointment with your primary care doctor and make
yeah.
sure, blood work and things are going good with that. And when you have those follow-up appointments, they give you a questionnaire now that will screen you for depression, screen you for anxiety. And I remember looking at this, and I'm a licensed therapist at this point. I'm not in the perinatal mental health realm at that point, but
Mhm.
I'm a licensed social worker, right? So I know about this scale. I know what they're assessing for, all the things.
Mhm.
And even when I still got that scale, I remember feeling like I don't know if I really can say how much I'm struggling right now
Wow.
to this doctor. And this isn't even my OBGYN doctor. This was my primary care who I have a lovely relationship with my primary care doctor.
Mhm.
But I remember having that feeling of like I don't know if I can share. And it wasn't because it was because of the messages I was telling myself. I was
Okay.
telling myself that this person may not believe me or they may judge me,
Hmm.
right? And I don't know if many people know how common it is for moms to have those thoughts of I'm either not going to be believed, so someone's going to tell me minimize my experience of like, oh, you're fine. It's just postpartum life. You'll get through it and minimize
So many
it.
moms have gone through it.
Yes. So many
Mhm.
moms have gone through it. Don't worry, you'll get through it. So
Mhm.
then in that moment, you feel like, man, no one gets how hard this feels for me right now.
Okay.
Right? Like they're wanting me to be at a place in the future where I'm not at. And so and I remember being very brave and courageous. Joshua 1:9, I was strong and courageous. And I remember telling my doctor, I am really, really struggling.
Mhm.
And I remember getting so tearful in that room with her. And by the grace of God, she had had a baby not too long before me. And I think she really understood the postpartum and motherhood life as well. So she could really meet me where I was and understood my experience. And I didn't feel all those things that I had worry about.
Right.
But I just say all that because sometimes that fear of judgment or that fear of being seen as an unfit mom or fear of being seen as that like you can't do it can really be a barrier for moms to open up and share that they're struggling. And so, that's why it's so important to know that there's perinatal mental health therapists. There are people who truly know what this transition is like as far as becoming a mom and can meet you exactly where you are. And there's safe spaces to open up. And so
Yes.
just wanted to share. That was a long way of adding on to
No,
that
that
piece.
was perfect. But you're right.
Mhm.
Just underscoring what you just said, just having that, knowing that you have that safe space to really be very transparent and say exactly how you're feeling
Yeah.
without having to really feel that you have to hold back or that that healthcare professional is going to try to make certain judgment calls about you, but that this or to assume that your experience is so out of the norm, perhaps from what another mom has walked through. So you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of moms watching will identify with that. Like, okay, I'm looking at this. How truthful can I really be as I fill out this form? How, will my doctor, will my primary care physician, or what have you, will they really understand and have that compassion to
Yeah.
really help me through this and walk me through this process, as opposed to, like you said, and I think you said it so powerfully, assuming that I'm somewhere in the future where I may not really be ready to be there yet. I might need that extra support for someone to help me navigate and walk through that, to get to
To
a
get
place where I am
to.
healthy,
Yeah.
like you said, physically and spiritually and mentally. Yeah,
Because it's not like the mom doesn't wanna get there. It's not like she doesn't want to enjoy motherhood and feel all of those positive emotions. It's just and she needs support in navigating all the changes that
right.
she's experiencing. So, yes, you said it perfectly. Yeah.
Yes, I definitely agree. And one of the things I think is also powerful is kind of, as we've talked about, just want to underscore it for those who are watching, the fact that, having a safe space is so important, especially in this day and age, and being able to have that type of relationship with your doctor, have that type of relationship with a good, healthy support system that will really meet you where you are and will really walk alongside with you. It won't be a bunch of judgment or a lot of assuming that you should be further along than perhaps you're ready to be because of what you have, just walked through as a result of a difficult birth experience.
Mhm.
So all of these things that we are underscoring and really taking time to really walk through. Um, we encourage any mom out there who perhaps is currently experiencing this, or of another mom who may be trying to navigate this journey, but maybe they're really struggling, to encourage them and let them know that it is okay to reach out and it is okay to get the support and the help that they need. Let's talk about that, the nervous system. And, a lot of what we've been talking about tonight has been dealing, of course, with the mental capacity of a mom and kind of that assumption that even mentally, in addition to physically, that moms are expected to kind of just really be able to bounce back really quickly. Um, but the reality of a difficult birthing experience is that it can kind of impact our nervous system. Can you talk a little bit about that and help us to understand what are some of the impacts that it has on our nervous system?
Yes. And when it comes that's a great question. When it comes to childbirth trauma, some of the impacts or, the effects that I see on the nervous system is where the mom may find herself replaying parts of the birth. So maybe there's parts of the birth that really stick out to her that were
Mhm.
really overwhelming. And those parts of her story, she may replay them in her head, almost like the images kind of just replay or cycle.
Mhm.
They're also so that's one way it impacts the nervous system, having those replaying thoughts, replaying images of what happened.
Mhm.
The second is there's can often be a layer of avoidance. What I mean by that is where the mother may avoid talking about her birth story.
Okay.
So if someone comes up to her family member, coworker, whoever it is, and says, "Hey, how was your birth?" She may feel tight and tense and anxious or panicky about even retelling the details of what happened. So that's another kind of sign that the nervous system has been impacted by what you went through. And the avoidance can even go to a level of where you may not even want to go back to the hospital where you gave birth at. So for some women, their OBGYN, their GYN section is connected to the hospital that they gave birth to. And so even that can be triggering to go back through those hallways again. And then the wave of emotion, the wave of those body sensations kind of takes over. That's another sign that your nervous system has been impacted. Another common thing that I will hear is, especially for women who have survived traumatic C-sections, is they may have a hard time looking at their C-section scar or even touching their C-section scar. And that is just, again, another sign that you're not doing anything wrong. It's just the fact that your nervous system is still processing what you experienced.
Okay.
Right. And so the body, in a lot of ways, is on high alert. The body hasn't translated to the fact that we survived through that really scary, unpredictable, overwhelming birth or pregnancy. And now we're back home safe.
Okay.
Right. Like the mind hasn't the body hasn't translated that. And so that's why a lot of women can feel stuck. Like, why do I still feel so tense? Why do I keep replaying these thoughts? Why do I still get emotional when I talk about it? And it's because the nerve, like your body hasn't caught up with the fact that you're safe now. You're home now. You're safe, right? You're safe now. And so that requires certain trauma modalities to help. And by what I mean modalities like EMDR, we talked about that, to help to go and reprocess that experience.
Okay.
I often use this example. It's a common example that trauma therapists use, is that memory of your birth or your pregnancy that was really complicated is almost like a file that you think of, like a filing cabinet, and that one pesky file that just won't fit. It's just kind of sticks out, annoying. It's like, that's kind of how that memory is stored in your mind. It's like the pesky one that won't just go away. Because if I was to ask you now, Chanel, like, where were you this time last year at 8:30 p.m.? Like, you may not remember what you were doing this exact day last year, right?
Right.
And that's because that memory got filed away correctly, and there it's off, right?
Right.
But if a year ago today you had a traumatic birth or child experience, you would be able to tell me exactly what happened.
Pinpoint it.
Right? Because that pesky file is right there.
Yeah.
And so that's why I tell women, like, it's so important not to judge yourself or put pressure on yourself to just move on, because that pesky file has to be reprocessed. It has to be filed away correctly in order for you to even move on. And so you need the right support, trauma-informed therapist, a perinatal mental health therapist to support you along that journey to get there.
I agree. Wow. I definitely can remember, even with my oldest now being 18, I feel like I remember all of my birthing stories. I remember something amazing about each one of them, or something that you said, like, stuck out to me for sure, where I can pinpoint. Yeah. And it's good to have, the right professionals, as you said, to walk alongside you through that process, as you look to heal in each area, in each space. Excuse me. So let's talk a little bit now, since we've talked about the need. We've kind of underscored tonight the need for moms to obtain therapy in situations where maybe they've had a traumatic birth experience, or maybe there's a lot of overwhelm. Maybe there's a lot of things that are happening that they just cannot specifically give language to in the aftermath of that childbirth. But one thing that I think we also have to have a conversation about is the reality that in some of our cultures, therapy is frowned upon. There's cultural stigma. Uh, you know, if someone makes that choice, or is considering rather to make the choice to really seek out, professional support. And so for a mom that has perhaps grown up, Brittany, in that type of culture, where there's been all of this stigma placed around things like therapy or the need for a therapist. How does that mom ultimately get to the point where she says, look, I'm going to prioritize my well-being and I'm just going to go ahead and seek therapy?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I know every mom's journey there to like getting to that revelation of that I need the support is different. But I do want to talk about like that stigma. And as you mentioned, like there's some cultures where that is very big, where therapy is not a thing. You don't talk about your problems. Or maybe you even grew up in a household where you didn't talk about what you were feeling. You didn't talk about what you were going through. And so it may be even hard as an adult to sometimes name what you're feeling or even talk about it. And so the thought of going to therapy could seem a bit over intimidating or overwhelming, which can make a lot of sense. I have a lot of compassion for people who feel nervous about it. Like it makes sense that you feel nervous about it.
Mhm.
And I also want to say this comes up quite often too within the Christian faith as well, where there can be a lot of stigma around going to therapy as a Christian. I mean, I don't think that's talked about enough either. But I truly believe, God gave us emotions for a reason, right? And
Mhm.
I just think God is so smart in the way that he has designed our mind and designed our heart. And I believe that you can have faith and you can have your emotions, like those things can coexist.
Yes.
That because you're going through a hard time, like for me with the depression or maybe someone else with anxiety, it doesn't mean that you do not have faith. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think it's also really important to know that, when we think about even our physical health, that if we have a broken bone or we're struggling with something physically, we go to see a doctor for it, right? Like we take the time to go and get our needs met when it comes to the physical. Well, with
Okay.
the mental, we're dealing with an organ, a part of our body, right? That's just like any other part of our body, right? And so it's really important to, if you're dealing with something mentally, to make sure that you're going to the place to get that mental support. And I want to talk about this a little bit too from the Christian side, that, there are therapists who are Christian therapists that do
Yes.
Christian counseling. And so
Absolutely.
just like there are people of faith who are doctors and people of faith who are mechanics and people of faith who are artists, there are people of faith who God has given the gift of counseling.
Yes.
And so I always recommend to people, especially if you're in the Christian faith like us, to pray about who your therapist is. Ask the Lord to help you and lead you to a therapist. I think that can be one way to really kind of start that process of finding the right fit, is praying about that. And then I think also too, the mom or the woman really it has to be their choice. It can't be a forced thing where they're feeling pressure maybe from other people to do therapy. It
Okay.
needs to be their choice. They have to exercise their free will to go and do it. And I believe they have to get to the point where they're like, I no longer want to operate in survival mode. Because
Okay.
I think sometimes we get so comfortable operating in survival mode. And
Mhm.
one of the reasons why I even call my practice Worthy to Live which is based off of the scripture, John 10:10, where it says, Jesus came to give us life, so that Jesus died so that we can have life and have life more abundantly. And so I believe that we're not meant to survive. We're
Mhm.
meant to live. You are worthy to live. And not only just to live, you're supposed to live abundantly as well.
Yes.
And so I believe that, sometimes we get tired of being in survival mode. And so if you're really ready to get out of survival mode, get out of these patterns that are really keeping you stuck, these cycles that you can't seem to break, these thoughts or images that keep bothering you or causing you to be upset, then I believe those are the things that can really drive a woman to go and um, get therapy and get the support that she needs. And so those are the things that I would say around the stigma, and then also um, the points in someone's life where they'll usually make that decision of, oh, I need extra help. Like, all of
Yes.
my usual strategies for helping myself aren't working. That's another reason that usually brings people to therapy too. Like,
Yes.
I've gone for the walks. I've vented to my friends. I've called anybody who would answer the phone. I've called them and I've tried to talk about this thing, but it still bothers me. Then I
Right.
think that is really a sign that you should go to therapy and get connected to the professional support as you would with a doctor or anyone else.
Well said. I agree. I definitely agree 100%. And especially now, it's so important that we really prioritize our physical health as well as our mental health. We cannot be people who continue to neglect that. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, especially because moms a lot of times are accustomed to being the jugglers of so many different things and so many different responsibilities, right? And so
Mhm.
we definitely have to really prioritize our well being, our mental health, and getting that professional support should we need it. So,
Yes.
I absolutely love the work that you are doing,
Thank you.
Brittany. This, at least for me, it sounds like it's a very specific niche and one that needs more attention given to it because I think a lot of moms, this resonates with them with
Mhm.
respect to, you know, having that healthy space to really have someone walk alongside them as they, journey to a place of becoming healthy again,
Yeah.
and of really being able to have a professional help them process
Yeah.
whatever that it is, whether it's the postpartum depression or anxiety, or dealing with those triggers. You said that so powerfully. Dealing with the triggers. I mean, no one talks about that. No one talks about the fact that those being back at that hospital where a mom delivered could, not in every case, we're not saying suggesting that as in every case, but maybe for some moms that's a trigger. And there's not, at least I'll say, I have not heard a lot of conversation around that. So I really feel that the work that you're doing is absolutely important. It definitely needs to be highlighted. It definitely needs to, more moms need to know about this as a resource. Um, and so, for the moms that are watching, uh, talk a little bit about how they can reach out to you. Um, should they themselves feel that they need professional support, or if they know of another mom who may need professional support.
Yes, absolutely. If you live in Maryland or Washington, D.C., then Worthy to Live Therapy is taking new clients, and we see clients virtually and in person. So if you are pregnant, postpartum, or even if you're beyond the postpartum phase, you are welcome to reach out for therapy services. And we do see women who are not in perinatal stages as well. I work with many women who want to deal with the emotional overwhelm they may be experiencing, or any triggers, or even healing from childhood wounds. And so, anything that you are experiencing right now, but you don't want to go through it alone, then I encourage you to reach out. And you can go to worthytolivetherapy.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram if you want to learn more about healing from childbirth trauma. That's at Worthy to Live Therapy. So I would love to see you all on Instagram or even connect with me for a free consult. I would be happy to talk to you about services a bit more.
Yes, and is it safe to assume, I don't want to put you on the spot here, is it safe to assume, since you are specific to our area here of Maryland and DC, that should a mom be watching and perhaps they are in another state, um, would you also be able to assist them with perhaps referring them or making them aware of comparable services in other parts of the country?
Absolutely. So, what I would recommend if you are outside of Maryland or Washington, D.C., I would suggest you go to Postpartum Support International. Postpartum Support International is a wonderful website that has a directory of perinatal mental health therapists across the country. So, you would be able to put in Florida, your zip code, and then it would show you exactly which therapists are in your area. I don't always have specific references for different states. So that's why Postpartum Support International would be the best place to start your search if you're in outside of Maryland or Washington, D.C. But if you're in Maryland or Washington, D.C., and you just want to connect or maybe you want to find out about other resources, then you can totally reach out to me and I'm happy to support.
Awesome. And we're going to make certain that we've included Brittany's website in the chat in the comments section, as well as the link for the postpartum as well. We can include that. Can you say that one more time for us?
Postpartum Support International.
Okay. Postpartum Support International. So again, ladies, please make sure you watch this again. Make sure that any of the wisdom that Brittany shared with us tonight, which was a lot of wisdom nuggets, as I said already, make certain that you take notes and kind of give this some consideration if any of this conversation tonight has resonated with you personally, or as I said, if you know other moms who, as you're listening to our conversation tonight, you're saying, you know what, I know a mom who can definitely benefit from either, hearing this conversation or actually reaching out to get the resources and professional support that she needs. So again, I want to say thank you, Brittany. It has been a pleasure talking with you this evening. It has been a pleasure learning about all that of what your practice offers. And really just, it's been definitely educational, just getting a clear understanding of the different experiences that moms may undergo as a result of difficult childbirth and experiences. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with
Thank you.
our audience this evening. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And ladies, thank you for joining us tonight. We will see you again in April with another episode of Women Who Testify. So until next time, we bid you good night. Thanks for joining us and take care.
Bye. Thank you.